Okay, we are back again for episode 14 of the Chinksey Sports Presents, the Premier League show. Imminent football, 20 minutes away from the first fixture of the week. Live at Molineux between Wolves and Burnley. Followed by Arsenal's trip to Luton Town at Kenilworth Road, which is due to be an interesting and intriguing game live on Amazon Prime. I will be tuned into those fixtures, or the second one anyway. Right, so straight into the fixtures and straight into the results of last game week, which was a couple of days ago. Short turnaround. Was at the Emirates. First game was between Arsenal and the aforementioned Wolves. It ended 2-1 to the Gunners. Arsenal started the game off as if it were round 13 from their midweek rout of Lens. They went 2-0 up in no time thanks to goals from Bukayo Saka and captain Martin Odegaard. In a match reminiscent of last season where they'd often blow away their opponents in the first half hour or so. However, they were equally wasteful and unlucky as Wolves pulled a goal back after a mistake from Alexander Zinchenko. And instead of winning 4 or 5-0, which on the balance of play should have been, they ended up holding out for a 2-1 win, which crucially for them kept them top of the league. Next game, straight into it, is at the G-Tech Stadium between Brentford and Luton Town. It ended 3-1 to Brentford. I got that prediction spot on. Check the last podcast. I think these games are bread and butter for Brentford, and after their narrow defeat to Arsenal, I expected them to get back to winning ways promptly, and they so obliged. Surprisingly, Brian Mbeumo didn't manage to get on the score sheet, but he was instrumental in the win. Nonetheless, Neil Maupay seems to have already scored more goals for Brentford in his 6 months since rejoining them than he has in the last few years or so. Thomas Frank has clearly put an arm around him and the fans love him and have made him feel at home, which is clearly paying off. Luton severely lack quality and some of the goals that they're conceding at this level are very poor. For them to even stand a chance of staying up, they need to hope Everton, Bournemouth and perhaps Nottingham Forest and Fulham have a terrible second half to the season. There wasn't many 3 o'clock kickoffs on Saturday. I think this was the third of 3 at Turf Moor between Burnley and Sheffield United. Ended 5-0 to the home side, Burnley. This fixture is highly likely to be a championship one next season, but at least Burnley gave their fans a renewed sense of hope in their quest for survival. On the contrary, for United, this couldn't be more demoralising. Losing 5-0 to a side that you need to finish above to stand any chance of survival must be soul destroying. Paul Heckingbottom will have his work cut out picking up his players' confidence off the ground. Well, he would have done, but he was sacked earlier this morning and promptly replaced by their former boss, Chris Wilder. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw Ollie McBurney throw his elbow into someone's face, not once but twice in 10 minutes, to see red for his side. He was fortunate to not be sent off for it the first time, and considering he is United's best player and main source for goals, they'll need him at his best to even have a remote chance of staying up, though we all know that they're going down. Right, the 5:30 kickoff between Nottingham Forest and Everton ended 1-0 to 1-0 to Everton, the away side. This was a pretty scrappy affair between two sides that for me lack quality and a real clinical striker. Although you could argue that Beto and Chris Wood wouldn't have been starting had Taiwo Awoniyi and Dominic Calvert-Lewin been fit. Dwight McNeil has been in stellar form and a stellar signing for Sean Dyche's Everton since joining from Burnley, and his goal proved to be decisive. Good goal. I'm sure that this win will put the disappointment from losing to Manchester United in the circumstances that they did well and truly behind them. Speaking of Man United, they played in the 8 o'clock kickoff at St James's Park to Newcastle. They lost 1-0 If ever there was a game where the saying lucky to get nil was apt, it was this one. Newcastle destroyed United and could easily have been 5 or 6 down, or 5 or 6 up. There appears to be discontent amongst the United players, such as Anthony Martial, who caught a surly figure leading the line and appeared to have an on-field bust-up with his manager, Erik ten Hag. He quite frankly doesn't score enough goals or work hard enough and is surely a player United needs to get rid of. Sky Sports' Manchester United correspondent Carve Solihull has since said that Ten Hag has lost 50% of the dressing room and intimated that Varane and Casemiro have both fallen out with the under-pressure Dutchman in a Dutch pot, at boiling point. And hence why both have been dropped from the starting lineup. Something that would have been unthinkable last season. The fact that Marcus Rashford continues to look out of sorts in spite of his glorious form last season makes you wonder how long that this will last for. Something's got to give. If either you sack the manager or you sack 20 players. There's only one logical outcome there. Right, there was a lot of fixtures on Sunday and a lot of goals, a lot of exciting fixtures. First one was at the Vitality Stadium between Bournemouth and informed Aston Villa. Ended 2 apiece. Results like this are probably going to be the reason why Aston Villa miss out on Champions League football next season, because their home form cannot continue at this current rate. It's quite unsustainable, albeit impressive. I'll be surprised if they beat either Manchester City or Arsenal in the next 2 games, which are both at home. Their away form has been poor, to say the least. Not poor, but just between poor and average, I'd say, because they beat Chelsea and Spurs, but then they lost to Nottingham Forest and drew Bournemouth, which should be considered bad results for their lofty ambitions. The next fixture was at the London Derby between West Ham United and Crystal Palace, ended 1 apiece. Even though West Ham don't seem to be beating sides that they're clearly better than, such as Palace, their tremendous early season form seems to be levelling off a bit, and they currently lie in 9th position, roughly where they'll finish at the end of the season. I think they'll be 10th. I think Chelsea will eventually overtake them. David Moyes, I'm sure, will be targeting the Cups though, alongside a solid mid-table finish, possibly sneaking into Europe maybe through the league, but I doubt it. Palace, on the other hand, won't be in the top 10 and will probably be vying with Brentford for 11th. Internally, they'll probably be targeting survival and then top 10, but they definitely won't get the latter. Stamford Bridge fixture between Chelsea and Brighton ended 3-2 to Chelsea. Brighton shot themselves in the foot because not only did they put out a weakened side at Stamford Bridge after their midweek exploits in the Europa League, they then conceded 2 early sloppy goals from set pieces, found themselves 2-0 down in no time. When their 18-year-old Argentine wonderkid Facundo Buonanotte scored a delightful goal to halve the deficit, I thought game on, especially after Conor Gallagher saw red just before half time. Brighton then started to really dominate and push for that equaliser. They then go and concede the penalty after James Milner fouled Mykhailo Mudryk, who was through on goal. Once Enzo Fernandez scored the penalty and his second of the game to make it 3-1 to Chelsea, you just thought it would be too much of an uphill task for Brighton. And even though they got a late consolation, it wasn't enough. The next one was an unbelievable, topsy-turvy, crazy, cavalier game of football between Fulham and Liverpool at Anfield. Ended 4-3 to Liverpool. Fulham felt the power of Anfield here. Put it that way. Like I always say, it's probably the toughest place to go in football and win. Well, in English football anyway. Liverpool's perfect home record came under severe threat after Bobby Decordova-Reid looked like he was going to nick a famous win for the Cottagers. But Wataru Endo and Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is in the form of his life currently, scored two fantastic goals. But my favourite goal of the game was actually Alexis McAllister's goal from 30 yards, straight in the top corner, postage stamp, Queen Elizabeth. Worthy of winning any game of football. Liverpool's never say die attitude and brave ultra attacking style means that you cannot count them out of any game of football, especially considering how well they finish games off. They almost did it to Toulouse as well. I think they were losing 3-1 to Toulouse with like 3, 4, 5 minutes left. And they got it back to 3-2. They actually equalised, but the goal was chalked off. So they lost that game. But it goes to show, even if you're beating Liverpool 3-1 with 5 minutes to go, the game ain't over. It's pretty clear that this season they mean business and are still well in contention for 4 trophies going into the Christmas period. They're still in the Carabao Cup. They're through to the next round of the Europa League. Haven't played the FA Cup yet, but they play Arsenal in that game at the Emirates in January. And are well and truly in the title race going into Christmas. Last game of the weekend was at the Etihad Stadium between Manchester City and Tottenham Hotspur. Ended 3-3. This game was as thrilling and enthralling match as you'll see. In the first half, Manchester City should have been out of sight, and after they got caught in a counter-attack and punished by Heung-min Son, who always seems to score against them, they came on strong and looked a real threat on the left wing, especially through Jeremy Doku. Even though they hit the post a couple times and had Spurs on the ropes, Spurs always posed a threat on the counter-attack with pacey players such as Son, Kulusevski, Johnson and Destiny Oduji inverting alongside Song from left back. Crazy, he's a left back, but then more time he's actually alongside the striker. Whereas Ben Davies now kind of goes across to left back, and then you obviously have Porro on the right, and then you have what's his name, Royale at centre half. City look vulnerable at the back, and this season they appear to have a soft underbelly that sides are starting to both expose and exploit. Spurs were brave to persist with a high line throughout, and they perhaps rode their luck at times. Make no mistake about it, though. This is in no uncertain terms 2 crucial points dropped for Manchester City. Right, straight into the fixtures for today. Starting off with the game that's going to kick off in 10 minutes. Between Wolves and Burnley, my predictions after 2 defeats in a week for Wolves in London against Fulham and Arsenal respectively, the old gold and black outfit need to get back to winning ways. On the other hand, after a comprehensive 5-0 home victory against Sheffield United, Burnley will be looking to build momentum and will be looking to take a point from this one in their bid to stave off relegation. 2-1 Wolves for me. I think Wolves is just gonna... They're at home. They're really good at home. I think they're gonna put their poor form behind them and get back to winning ways today. Next fixture is the one that kicks off in just under an hour at Kenilworth Road. A semi-derby because it's not far from Arsenal's training grounds, not far from North London, Luton. Arsenal have an unbelievable opportunity to go 5 points clear at the top of the table and 6 clear of rivals and holders Manchester City with a win at Kenilworth Road today. Surely that's enough of an incentive for the Arsenal to win there. Luton, on the contrary, need the win to remain outside the drop zone no matter what this week, with both Burnley and Everton poised to overtake them with wins. Right, so yeah, I've gone 3-0 to Arsenal as my prediction. Next game is tomorrow at Old Trafford between Manchester United and Chelsea. Chelsea go into this game as favourites, even though they have a terrible record against United. In fact, their away record against them is even worse. They've only beaten United twice in 5 years, spanning over 14 games in all competitions. And even though United lost their last game after a terrible performance to Newcastle, Prior to that, they've been churning out results, if not performances. And I'm backing them to pick up all 3 points in what should be a tight affair. 2-1 United. Tottenham Hotspur v West Ham United in a grudge match, London derby. I think Spurs will use the euphoria from clinching that late equaliser from the jaws of despair at the Etihad on Sunday to pick up their first win in 5 games against the Hammers. Their first win in 5 Premier League games, not against West Ham. West Ham were held to a disappointing draw at home to Palace on Sunday, but won't be disappointed with another draw at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But I don't think they're going to quite have enough to get that. I'm going for a 2-1 home win to Spurs. Next one is one I'm really looking forward to at Villa Park between Aston Villa and Manchester City. I'll be watching that game. Aston Villa's record of 13 straight Premier League victories will face its biggest test yet against treble winners Manchester City, who themselves haven't won in the last 3 league games. City could go into this game trailing 6 points behind Arsenal, who already have a chip on their shoulder after last season's failure to lift the title. I think in this one we're going to find out how good Aston Villa really are. It won't matter though if Manchester City turn up and play well. If Man City turn up, they're going to win. Can't help but feel that that's going to be the case, and I've gone for a City win. I'm going to go for 3-1. I think Villa have got goals in them. Could potentially have 2 or 3 goals in them, but I'm going to go 3-1 to City. Following that game is a game between Sheffield United and Liverpool. The reappointed Sheffield United boss Chris Wilder has been thrown in right at the deep end with this one, just a day into the job after Heckenbottom sacking. You would have thought they would have given a temporary role to a coach, get this game out of the way, and then give him the game. But now they're throwing him straight into it. It's probably going to end in a defeat. Sheffield United have already lost 9-0 and 5-0 twice this season. Crazy. Could be one of those results in this game too. Liverpool will want to at the very minimum stay on Arsenal's coattails until they meet on December the 23rd at Anfield, where they could potentially leapfrog them into top spot if things stay as they are. I think Liverpool will win this pretty comprehensively, but I think Sheffield United will get a goal, probably a consolation. I've gone 4-1 to Liverpool. This one, not the greatest game in the world between Crystal Palace and Bournemouth. Crystal Palace, on the whole, haven't been good this season, whereas Bournemouth are somewhat on a roll and on an upward trajectory, with 3 wins from the last 5, and the only loss came at Manchester City. I wouldn't be surprised if Bournemouth actually won this one, especially with the form that Antoine Semenyo on the right wing and Dominic Solanke are in, but I'll go with a 1-1 score draw. Looks like Bournemouth are getting it together. They got good attacking players. Justin Kluivert's doing well. Marcus Tavernier scoring a few goals. And yeah, they look pretty decent. I don't think they'll be going down this season. 1-1. Fulham against Nottingham Forest. For me, at Craven Cottage, for me, it's a battle between 2 teams that could potentially be dragged into a relegation scrap, which would involve the 3 promoted sides, Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United, and then possibly Bournemouth and Everton. If they're not careful, I think that Fulham have more about them than Forest, though it will probably take the positives from their performance at Anfield on Sunday into this game, and I think that will consequently mean they win this 2-0 to Fulham. Next game between Everton and Newcastle at Goodison Park. This should be a quite interesting game between 2 sides who have generally been good in good form over the last 5 or 6 games and not lost many. Believe they both only lost once in the last 5 or 6. I don't think Everton have it in them to beat Newcastle at this moment in time, but they're more than capable of getting a point, potentially a 1-0 or 2-2. But I think it should be interesting how Anthony Gordon fares against his boyhood club at Goodison Park. I've gone 2-1 to Newcastle. I think Newcastle are in good form. They've beaten Chelsea and Man United well, and they played well against PSG. I just think they're going to have too much at Everton, who are half decent, but nah, Newcastle for me, 2-1. And then obviously the last fixture of game week 15 is at the Amex Stadium between Brighton and Brentford. Clash of styles. Brentford, physical, strong, battling, grafters, whereas Brighton are going to want to play the ball out, knock the ball about, and yeah, score great goals. But it should be a good game. It's a clash of styles. Brighton rotated their squad heavily against the Chelsea side, who've already beaten them in the Carabao Cup in very similar circumstances. When I saw Brighton's team sheet against Chelsea, I knew that they were going to lose that. The likes of Cairo Matoma and João Pedro were on the bench, both key players for them, and they were 2 down in no time. They want to put that result behind them, but they'll come up against a resolute Brentford side who will be in awkward components, to say the least. I think that this one will be a draw. If not, it will be a bright and narrow win, but I'm going to go 2 apiece. Okay, nice quick one straight back on Saturday.